Good day everyone, I'm Sharnali Cabase and we're going to talk about the social issue, poverty in Philippines. But first things first, what is poverty? Poverty is a state or condition in which a person or community lacks the financial resources and essentials for a minimum standard of living. Now, in our country, the Philippines, poverty is one of the most significant challenges we face. We Filipinos have a hard time surviving in such difficult conditions, and some of us are falling more and more into extreme poverty. According to the Asian Development Bank, the major causes of poverty include low economic growth, a weak agricultural sector, increased population rates, and a high volume of inequality. Because of these factors, there are a lot of effects of poverty in the Philippines. Thus, we will be discussing now. We first have Eliza Salamania to discuss her reaction to the first effect of poverty. Take it away, Eliza.
Hi everyone, I am Eliza Salamania and I'll be talking about the effect of the poverty on the economy. The Philippines has a fairly high poverty rate, with more than 16% of the population living below the poverty line. Due to many people who are reliant on agriculture for an income and inequality wealth distribution, about 17.6 million of Filipinos struggle to afford basic necessities. From 2015 to 2020, the poverty rate declined from 21.6% to 16.6%. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte aims to reduce the poverty rate to 14% by 2022. Through its strategy, Ambition 2040, the government plans to eradicate the extreme poverty in the Philippines by the year 2040. Unfortunately, the poverty is expected to increase because of the coronavirus crisis. This will lead to a decrease of consumption growth and further income losses. So with that, greater efforts are necessary to combat the poverty in the Philippines amid the pandemic, which hit the impoverished the hardest. Poverty directly impacts the economic growth due to constraints in credit and the underdevelopment of the financial market and inequality to income and assets. The capacity constraints investment is critical to economic growth and for those people who have low income to escape from poverty. Very low income levels are a fundamental reason why they cannot save enough to finance productive investments.
Next is Aurel Flores.
Poverty is a very common social issue in the Philippines. But how does it affect our health status? Poverty can affect health by limiting access to proper nutrition with healthy foods and shelter for safe neighborhoods to live, learn, and work. With limited access to clean air, water, and utilities or other elements that define an individual's standard of living. Economic prosperity can provide individuals access to resources to avoid or buffer exposure to health risks. However, with poverty, it is very, very difficult to avoid exposure to health risks. Therefore, poverty is associated with various health outcomes, including shorter life expectancy, higher infant mortality rates, and higher death rates. For me, it's kinda unfair. I mean, it really is unfair knowing that poverty is the result of inequality. It is the result of how the society is organized. Therefore, poverty is not a misfortune at all, because poverty is an injustice. And it is painful to think that there are a lot of people out there suffering with regards to their health status because they are unable to afford medical treatments. And they do not have access to various opportunities that will allow them to move further up the social ladder. However, it is not a choice, because it is a product of the conditions formed and perpetuated by that society.
Next is Francis Faye C. Cabarubias.
Now, another effect of poverty, crime. Crime is an action or activity that constitutes an offense that may be prosecuted by the state or is punishable by the law. And it is one of the major problems faced by almost every country. Now, why do people do crime? Researchers have shown that one of the overwhelming reasons why people steal is due to the difficulties resulted by poverty. Since there isn't that much resources to go around, employment isn't that high for all, and other problems caused by poverty, desperate people tend to resort to crimes and thievery, especially since majority of the families are large in sizes, are large in numbers. There are more mouths to feed. There are more people to provide for. So those desperate people resort to drastic measures. Crime offers a way in which people can obtain material goods that they cannot attain through legitimate means. Often threat or force helps them acquire more goods, thus results them to committing violent crimes, such as robbery, which is the second most common violent crime. And for those people, the price that crime yields outweighs the risk of being caught, especially given that their opportunity cost is lower than that of a wealthier person. There are also other factors that influences crime and are correlated to poverty as well. Higher unemployment rates would certainly increase poverty and at the same time lead to more crime due to depression associated with being unemployed. Personal income per capita, which is inversely associated with poverty level, still brings the possibility of increased crime, since more wealth means more benefits to thieves and robbers. However, in this year's statistics have shown that crime rates have decreased since people have been under quarantine, like the 8 focus crimes. The PNP reported a decrease of 39.59% of the total 8 focus crimes for the year 2020 compared to that of 2019. The decrease was said to be due to the implementation of community quarantines all over the country. The director of the Directorate for Investigation and Detective Management stated that the total national crime volume dropped by 39.51% from the 68,214 cases back in 2019 to the 41,269 cases of 2020. In conclusion, crime rates have dropped since everyone started hiding, which is both glad and disappointing to hear. It's great to hear that the crime rates have decreased, but it's also disappointing that it has only happened now when we're under pandemic, when we're amid pandemic. And this shows our lack of contingency in solving this issue, especially since it has only dropped, not been fully solved.
Next is LG Rachma Gabronino.
Hi everyone, I am LG Rachma Gabronino. I am here to talk about the effects of poverty on children in the Philippines. So, a child is an individual who has not yet reached the age of maturity. A child needs proper care in order to grow and live comfortably. However, most children are far from this because of poverty. So, how does poverty affect children? Poverty negatively affects children each moment of their lives. Poverty affects physical health. It increases the chances of children being sick due to inadequacy or even unavailability of their needs, such as water, food, vitamins, and more. Thus, hampering physical development, shortening life expectancy, and inflating infant and child mortality rates. Poverty also affects mental health as it increases stress in children's lives. Poverty increases the risk of mental illnesses including anxiety, depression, and substance addiction. When it comes to emotional health, it may hinder children to manage and express their emotions properly. Also on how they can cope with both positive and negative emotions.
especially when it comes to developing coping mechanisms for emotions that are negative. This can cause the children to lag behind, affecting their ability to learn and work in the real world, which may lead to reduced educational and professional attainment. Poverty also affects social health as it may cause social deprivation wherein they may feel like they do not belong. Thus, they may feel that they are unwanted, unvalued, and unloved. They may feel vulnerable and lonely. With their environment, they are more likely to be exposed to environmental toxins and other hazards, including crime and violence. With poverty taking a toll on Filipinos, parents often fail to earn the desired amount of money to support their families. Many children have needs that aren't met, they don't get to go to school, and are forced to work so that they can help their parents earn money. Statistics show that around 3.6 million children are child laborers in the Philippines. This is 15.9% of the entire population. For me, it is alarming to think that a lot of children in our country are suffering because of poverty. A lot of children are not getting a good chance at life because they lack the essentials and financial resources for a minimum standard of living. What's worse is these children barely have a choice. At a young age, they're forced to face different challenges in order to survive. This is so sad because it's affecting their overall health. At the same time, it jeopardizes their future.
Next is Josh Montedramas.
Poverty is the state where an individual or family are not able to provide the necessities that they need to survive. May it be food, clothing, shelter, etc. Here in the Philippines, it has been constant yet a big problem for society and the country. How does it affect families? Well, for one, the government is the one responsible for the country. And if a country has high poverty rate, then they have to do something about it. Sadly, the Philippine government has not yet resolved this issue, and more families will suffer from poverty. Because of poverty, families suffer from lack of food. Some families would only eat once a day, or as we usually call it, isang kahig isang tuka. Rationing food is what they would usually do. Lack of water, whether for drinking or for hygiene purposes. These families would rarely take a bath every day in order for them to conserve water. And in terms of drinking water, they would only drink water when they are really thirsty. Lack of clothing. Most families under the poverty line tend to wear ragged clothes, or they cannot afford to buy new clothes for themselves. And some would even wear the same clothes every single day. Lack of shelter. Most of these families stay outdoors, specifically on streets, alleys, and many more. And because of these shortcomings, most of these poor families get sick. And since they can't afford to go to hospitals, most of them sadly die untreated. If the Philippine government doesn't do anything about this, then what future will this country have? The primary objective should be family first, for family is the most important foundation to society. Change starts in the government, and everything else will fall in place.
Despite the many definitions, one thing is certain. Poverty is a complex societal issue. No matter how poverty is defined, it can be agreed that it is an issue that requires everyone's attention. It is important that all members of society work together to provide opportunities for all people to reach their potential. It helps all of us to help one another. But unfortunately, Philippines is expected to increase in poverty due to the coronavirus crisis. I know this is a hard time for all of us, but I think if we give, even with our smallest effort in extending our hands to the less fortunate, all Filipinos can rise up against this poverty despite the pandemic.
And this has been Channel Kabasa.
This has been Josh and Montedramas.
This has been Aurel Flores.
This has been Francis Facey Cabrera.
This has been LG Rajma Gabriel.
This has been Eliza Solmania. Thank you.
Thank you.